The Metaverse is emerging as the next big technology platform and promises to be the next frontier for human experiences on the internet. Into the Metaverse covers companies, technologies, and trends that are bringing these promises to life. Join creator and host Jonathan Ross Friedman, founder and CEO of Super Social, as he interviews the brilliant minds that are building, shaping, and investing in the Metaverse.
Welcome to Into the Metaverse. This is Jan, and with me today is Priya on quite a challenging beginning for the week. Priya, good to see you nonetheless.
Yon, it's good to see you too. I mean, the events that we've been seeing in Israel over the last couple of days have been horrific. I think we're all stunned at the level of sort of savagery that we're seeing. And I just thought about you all weekend because you're Israeli and you were born and brought up in Israel. Tell me what's happening for you right now.
Yeah, these have been, I think, devastating few days. Obviously, thank God, at least my family, my friends are safe and sound, and I think this is a level of atrocities and violence that we have never seen performed in Israel against civilians coming into people's homes. I think the videos, the photos, the reports from the field speaks for themselves. This has been inhumane actions that continue to go, and I think the incredible level of support internationally from the international community to Israel at this stage is incredible. And I obviously always choose to be optimistic. It's hard with what has been transpiring over the last 2-3 days with the actions there by Hamas and the terrorist groups. But Israel is resilient. Israelis are strong. It's a country that is important, I think, for the wider world to exist. It's a beacon of democracy and freedom in a violent region of the world. And I think it's something that everyone around the world should pay attention to, because Israel is not just fighting for its own independence, but it also is fighting for remaining free, remaining a democracy, and showing that democracy is valuable, especially in a region of the world that is typically non-democratic. And so I think everyone should care about what's happening, aside from the human side of things and seeing the incredible, the terrible atrocities that has been performed against civilian population, kids, families, elderly, but also because of the bigger statement it makes about the world we want to live in. And we keep talking about that, right? The value of being safe and free, the value of democracy, and I think the inhumane actions and the attacks performed by these terror groups leave no room for imagination for what type of actions like that will happen in other parts of the world. And so I think in a way Israel fights for his own independence and safety, but also continuing to be a beacon for the rest of the world and a thriving democracy.
Jan, my heart goes out to you. I know the same for the viewers and listeners of this podcast as well. We're with you and your family and sending love. So much love to all of you. So
thank you,
I'm
Priya.
sorry for everything you're going through and the world going through. Okay, let's turn now.
It is the world. It's not just me. It's the world. And I think anyone that cares about democracy and the free world should be shaken to the core and should care about the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's turn to tech. Let's turn to tech stories of the week. And let's start by talking a little bit about safety in the metaverse, particularly safety for young children. There was an article in Forbes this week. We saw some actions taken with Fortnite in terms of age ratings for their products now. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I do think it's an incredibly important topic. You know, I was a member at an initiative related to creating a safe and trustworthy virtual space, an initiative led by the Boston Children's Hospital. I'm also a member in the Metaverse Council by the World Economic Forum, where, you know, creating a safe environment is a pillar of the conversations we're having there. And Roblox also as a platform already has age gating and making sure that certain content is only available to certain people. Roblox also doesn't allow advertising to under 13 user base. And I think Fortnite is the next big platform that is now also enabling segmenting content for different age groups. And I think that is important because we're going to have this kind of gigantic virtual landscape that is very immersive with all of the advantages of being part of a 3D internet where everything feels more real. And so you can imagine that all of the experience that you've seen so far with the current iteration of the internet are going to be amplified 10 times, maybe 100 times in terms of the impact it has on young people. And so I think that the stand that companies like Fortnite and Epic Games and Roblox are making in ensuring that the large scale environment that they're creating are going to be safe for kids, I think it's an important statement. Are we going to have 100% protection against bad actors? No. There's always a way for bad actors to be bad actors. But I think it's important that companies like Epic, like Roblox, and many others, I mean, Apple and Meta, and everyone that is really going to enable the evolution of the internet, I think learning from what happened with social media. We've talked about the level of depression, loneliness, anxiety that social media has created, and all the signs that were very early on already there with companies like Meta, previously Facebook, and the way Instagram impacts the self-worth of young people. All of those things are not going to go away in the metaverse. Quite the opposite. I think they're going to be amplified so much more because we're going to have this deep sense of presence, because there's going to be no limitation to what we can do, who we can be, and how things make us feel. And it will be even more intense because we're going to be there present as avatars with all sorts of technology that allows us to feel even more immersed in technology. And so I think there is a really important work that we need to do. And I think creating that age segmentation, I think it's a good step in the right direction. But I think big challenges are ahead of us in terms of really making 3D virtual worlds safe and trustworthy. And technology has a role to play, right? With algorithms and machine learning, and making sure that kids can enjoy a free environment that is also safe and protected against bad actors. And I think it's important to see these signals from these companies.
It'll be interesting to see also how much of this is really coming forward in terms of what the kids monitor for themselves, because you may have age ratings, but if you're sending out these age ratings, but it's not like parents are going in and actually seeing these ratings. Are the kids going to self-monitor? Like, I think some information is better than none, and some kids, yes, absolutely will say, yeah, I don't want to go near that rated R or NC-17 content. That's just not for me. Some of them are going to love it and want to dive right in. And I don't think we're talking about age gating in terms of actual restrictions. There's some of that already, certainly on Roblox, but I don't know, within these universes, how much are these recommendations versus actually stopping children from getting to content that's not appropriate for their age?
I think it's a good question. I think the bigger question is how these platforms are going to manage the access of younger people or users to those experiences. So for example, on Roblox, you can really, when you open a profile on Roblox, you can say whatever your age you want it to be, right? So you may be 12, but you can also say you're above a certain age. And so I think a lot of what needs to happen also, there needs to be a certain level of verification of people's ages. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose if we're saying we're going to age out certain content. On Roblox today, you can build experiences that are targeted only for 17 plus, right? So I can build an experience as a studio and I can make that experience only available to 17 plus. But how do we know that all of those 17 plus are actually 17 plus, right? So I think these platforms like Fortnite, Roblox, and so on and so forth, there's going to have to be a step change in how do we really make sure and verify that these environments are going to be truly safe and trusted. And I think part of that is validating people's age. But let's play that for a second. If you need to validate, so what are you going to do? You're going to ask a 12-year-old to upload their document?
That's
no,
right.
You're probably going to need a parent to upload your document. And then you're really preventing from probably a large population of users to even interact with your platform because you need the parent to upload the ID. So you can see how it's not attractive for the platforms to deal with it. I do believe that the answer would have to come from the users, from the parents. And it may well be that some parents would say, if you're not validating my kid's age, they're not coming into your platform. I think some parents will say that. I think most parents may not say that. And I think ultimately the balance is going to be between what platforms want to do and what's good for their platforms and and how many parents actually want to enforce stricter rules of who is allowed to be onboarded into a platform and finding that balance. But I can't see how this is going to be a perfect system. But I do believe that it's important that the platforms and the technology companies are creating the tools that will enable parents to make the decisions for themselves and to protect their kids.
The immersive experience is coming for our workplaces as well in a new way now. Microsoft has just announced the release of its new Mesh. Tell us what this means, and are we going to be having these meetings in a slightly different way going forward?
Look, Microsoft has been a very early player in the immersive workplace and productivity. If you recall, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, they already launched a first version of HoloLens for developers, right? Their own mixed reality device. They were very much head to head against, Magic Leap, right? Now everyone talks about Meta and Apple, and I know we have a bullet on that in a sec. But I think what Microsoft is doing with Microsoft Mesh is really part of what I see as Satya Nadella's strategy, which is Microsoft is a software company, right? And they are the largest company in the world when it comes to workplace and productivity apps, anywhere from Word to Excel to Outlook and so on and so forth, and Teams. And so I think what we're seeing with Microsoft is they understand, especially with the evolution of MetaQuest and Meta Pro, the introduction soon of Vision Pro from Apple. I think what Microsoft is realizing, which is why they're already dipping their toes with Microsoft Mesh, is that immersive devices are going to be a big part of the way people interact and work and collaborate. Not only in a world that is, to a large scale, people work remotely, but also this is part of the future that we want to enable. We want to enable more freedom, more flexibility for workers. And we also believe that people are going to be able to collaborate in real time through 3D environment and 3D devices. And I think what we're seeing here is Microsoft dipping their toes. It's not a big announcement, but it's an interesting announcement. It shows you that Microsoft is already building the strategy of deploying their software in existing devices and making sure that people, as MetaQuest Pro becomes more proliferated, as Vision Pro is introduced, as Magic Leap becomes a bigger user base. And what you're seeing with Microsoft consistently, and I think this is their gameplay, is their software, they want it to run on all devices, especially when it comes to consumers and especially as it comes to workforce and workplace. And I think Mesh is kind of a small step in that direction.
All right. So, Jan, let's turn now to Meta. They had their Meta Connect annual conference. I think that happened since we talked to each other last. They debuted some new products, some upgrades, some features. The Meta Quest 3 has AI that is put into it. We're going to see that with many of the devices that are coming out. Tell me what your takeaway was.
I think my takeaway was very similar to something you and I talked about previously, which was the divergent strategies that Meta and Apple are pursuing, with Apple going after the high-end audience, high-end products, controlling the entire ecosystem, right? Taking advantage of their app store and making sure that they are able to continue and deliver products that are end-to-end with very seamless user interface, user experience, and a cohesive product experience for consumers. Meta is taking a very different approach. They're continuously making devices even more affordable. They want to make sure that they can be integrated into the workplace. We've seen a Microsoft announcement about Meta. We've seen Roblox launching on Meta. We've seen Meta continuing to invest in Horizon. And so it seems like Meta is trying a bunch of different ways, a bunch of different things, a bunch of different devices to differentiate itself. And there was an interesting comment that Meta's CTO said about the high-end devices, and he said something like to the tune of they choose not to do high-end devices, right? He said we could have done it, we chose not to do that. I think they chose not to do it because no one would have bought a $3,000, $3,500 Meta devices. Let's see if they buy Vision Pro and Apple devices at that price point. I think some will, but I think it's very likely that Meta would not sell products at that price point. And so they're going after the mass audience. So they're playing Android, like a different version of an Android, and Apple is playing Apple. And I think both of them can be successful. But as you look at Apple, Apple now has, I think, about 60% market share in the US in smartphones. Doesn't that blow your mind that they have 60% market share of the iPhone? That phone that people thought no way anyone is going to buy because it's too expensive.
Right.
So
Yeah,
That's my
they
take.
know the way to our hearts for many of us, right? And I think that, at the end of the day, Meta's right to find a different sandbox to play in instead of taking it head on in that way. All right, Jan, it was great to talk with you this week. I'm looking forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you, Priya. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Into the Metaverse. We hope you learned a lot and explored new aspects of the Metaverse.